to get down into the sort of nitty gritty of how um, After Effects works and different things that you can kind of do to add something to this. So right now I just have these, really awesome football monsters jumping, right? But if I wanted to add something in the background, there's just a couple different things you can think about doing if you want to for that. So again, and I can zoom in or out with the command plus or minus on a Mac, something different on a PC. But basically, if I wanted to have like a shape layer, let's say I wanted a shape layer to go through this, there's a couple different things that you can do. And one thing I like to tell people to do, just because it helps us, me at least, not get confused, is if I just lock out the layers I'm not trying to mess with. So if there's a layer I don't want to mess with, I can do that. So I just lock that thing out. So even if I click around on an accident or whatever, it's not going to let me do anything to it. So those are kind of safe for now. If I want to do anything, I just unclick the lock button and play with it. Again, you can turn layers on and off also, just like in Photoshop. But so if I want a new shape layer, well, I could just go up here and go Layer, New, and there are all these different layers that you can select, like a solid. So I could pick a solid color. I could pick a null object. That's useful for some things. Adjustment layers and everything else. But I'm just gonna grab like this tool here, the rectangle tool. And just like in Illustrator or InDesign, any of those different products, I can pick my fill and my stroke color. So if I want this not to be, say I want it to be more like a light blue color, I can do that. If I want my stroke to be bigger, I can increase it. And now if I just click and drag on there, I'm going to get a beautiful blue square, right? There you go. And right now it's over the top of everything else, right? But if I just click and drag it underneath, now you can see that my blue square is like kind of living underneath the sort of like football guys, right? And so it's just a simple layer order. And since I made these, since we made the Photoshop layers transparent on a transparent background, and the comps that are nested in there are on the same transparent background, they just live there. It's pretty great, right? It's almost like a green screen. So that's why we don't want to have a white or a black square behind our layers in Photoshop before we bring them all in the beginning. So let's say, okay, I have this great shape and I want to do that. And I can make it a rectangle. I could make it an ellipse. Let's see, just for fun, I think I will do a star because, stars are more fun. And if you just click and hold, if you hold different modifier keys, it'll change the scale and all that sort of stuff, right? So, there's lots of different things that you can kind of play around with. Like if you hold down the command key, it'll make it more or less kind of like sort of angular, right? So I'm just going to do that. We'll make a star right here. And let's say I want to make the star shoot back across the other direction. So the way I would do that is, of course, just grab my star so it's the right size. It looks the way I want it to. And I can put it here. And then I can just go to Transform right under that shape layer. And I can go to Position. And if I put the keyframe there, and then I bring it over here and drag it across the screen, I can change the path a little bit if I want. And if I just want to drag that keyframe back to the beginning, I can do that too. And now, when I push play, they're going to kind of cross in the air. So exciting. And I didn't put this, I should put this one beneath the other ones, so you can kind of see them go in front of each other. There you go. So now that star shoots across there, right? And of course I can animate anything I want to in there. So I can animate the scale. So if I want it to look smaller at the beginning, I can do that and kind of shrink it. And then make it bigger in the middle. And then I can make it smaller here, right? So I want to shrink. So now it'll like kind of start off. And if I don't like kind of where the beginning of it is, I can just double click the position keyframe and just change the X and Y axis so I can just scooch it off the screen. There you go. So then let's see, it starts off, gets bigger, shoots through. So there you go. So I could put 10 of these stars in there. I could rotate them, right? So I could make them rotate. I could change the opacity. Anything you want to, you can keyframe down here. So by now we probably have pretty familiar with all that sort of stuff. So those are pretty cool things, but you can also do stuff like change the color. So if I wanted to change the fill color, I can keyframe that, right? I can keyframe that from the beginning to the end, so I can start it in blue and change the color by the time we get, to here to a different color. So if I pick red, it's gonna like turn it from blue to purple to red all the way across. Can do anything I want to the object, to the path, to the stroke itself. There's just a million twirl down kind of options that you can play around with here in terms of shapes. So that's a shape layer. Good way to add stuff to your particular project. And remember, you could do like a bunch of stars shooting across the screen in a separate comp, and then nest that star shooting comp into this one behind everything else, and it might be easier to kind of keep track of it if you wanted 20 different stars to shoot across the screen. So that's the basics of shape layers. So knock yourself out. There's a million ways to make them. You can, again, draw them this way. You can also draw them with a pen tool if you want custom shapes. And then there's lots of different layers that all show up in here that are all things that you can kind of goof around with. So we'll move on to some other things next.